am ready to get my camp on. I love this place.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I can find the best Tex-Mex restaurant here.
You rarely get to see your show in this environment with all these folks, and I can't wait.
Every script for every episode on Snowfall was engaging, it pushed the limit, and it was surprising most of all. We're experiencing kind of a golden age of television.
My name's Sarah Rodman. I'm the TV editor at the Los Angeles Times, and I'm so excited to be here for ATX Fest, and so excited to be here for Snowfall that you all got to see for the first time tonight. We will be joined this evening by showrunner Dave Andron, by Franklin Saints, Damson Idris, by creator John Singleton. Yeah. The gentleman who plays Teddy McDonald, Carter Hudson, television legend extraordinaire, Tommy Schlamme, come on out here. And Alejandro himself, Juan Javier Cardenas. It's a good-looking group of men, am I right? All right.
A lot of women.
Yeah,
We
wish
got a lot
Emily
of women
could have been
screaming. Here.
Yes, that would have been nice too, but I'm so glad to have you all here to talk about this. Now, for some of you, I know this was your first time seeing this with an audience, wasn't it?
I think for most of us, I mean, we'd screened it for our cast and crew kind of right around the holidays, but yes, for people who hadn't been involved in the show at all, this was the first time.
And did we respond appropriately?
I thought it was wonderful.
We feel your energy. We love it. We love it.
Well, it is great at the ATX. I mean, that's
right.
John, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the genesis of the project. That I know that there was a period of time that you were sort of out to sea, almost literally, like not thinking about working on anything. And then this came to you. You did some work on Empire, and you were inspired, and you thought, I have an idea. I'm ready to come back and tell another story.
Well, for me, it was about creating worlds. And one thing that I learned in college was they always said, write about what you know first and foremost. And I mean, this is kind of like my formative years. This is like before I made my first movie, you know, the things that I saw as a teenager. I went to school 1 year in the Valley, and it changed my life. It was the first time I ever went to school with not just Black and Mexican kids. It was an area of the Valley. How many people from LA? LA? So it was the early 80s, in 1981, it was Tarzana, and most of the kids were like Jewish and Japanese at the time. Remember, Tarzana was Jewish and Japanese for some reason. There was a lot of kids from Israel. And so, you know, it was a whole thing where like, there were kids out there, kids from the ghetto smoked weed, and the kids like who were in junior high school and high school did coke. I don't know if I should be saying this. Even at this age.
Too late.
But this is before crack, and so like it was an interesting thing to see how the transition was, where that drug was accessible to people in the hood, where they had access to it, but they mixed it with baking soda, and you know, it changed everything. So, I mean, I always believe that the best stories are the ones that are from the heart, and this was something that was germinating for many, many years.
And it also is a very complicated tale, and I'm curious for the young actors, most of whom probably don't remember this actual time period. Did you all have to do some research? Because this is a very complex tale.
This guy wasn't even born there.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
and I'm not American, so it's like I had no idea what was going on.
Gosh, I feel so old up here.
But all three of you, I mean, did you have to do some research into this? And especially for your character, Carter, I mean, it's really complicated. Did you know this history about the Contras and the CIA?
I didn't know any of it. And then when I found out, I was terrified, as we all should be. I thought, reading the material, reading the books and watching the documentaries, I was like, we should be talking about this every day. That the CIA was illegally operating within the United States is shocking and appalling and terrifying. And I had no idea, and we don't talk about it. And it's sort of considered almost fringe conspiracy theory at a certain point, and it's crazy. And yeah, there is a ton of material out there. Please go read all of it. It will blow your minds how complex and nefarious it all really was.
The more things change.
How about the line, right? About the
congressional
hearing.
I know everybody was tittering like, in the background.
Crazy.
Exactly. But I want to ask John about, Dave, about the focusing on this group of people. They're all beginners, essentially. They're all in over their head. They're all pretty cocky. And I'm really worried about how it's going to end for all of them. But
Franklin's not cocky.
You don't think that was cocky? All right, we're going to have to talk. But why this group? Why not an end user? Why not someone else in the chain? Why these people?
I mean, we felt obviously, and John and Eric were in it before I was in it, so some of the template was set, but it seemed like you obviously want South Central represented because those areas were hit hardest when crack finally
Yeah, and you want to have a loss of
landed.
innocence, and you want to see the tide of change with all the characters.
Right.
You know.
And then you want to feel that there's a lot of, as Carter said, there's a lot out there about the CIA's role in all of this and how big a part they played. But I think what's kind of undeniable at this point is that they played some part in it. So you wanted kind of that to filter in, because at a time when crack really exploded, they were responsible for it, I think at the very least looking the other way. So it felt like you had to kind of include that part of it. And then I always felt like East LA was just a fun way to represent another huge part of LA. Like it is very much a love letter to Los Angeles, and it felt like part of, obviously, the challenge then of taking these three groups and making it all feel of a whole. Part of thematically, and then what you want to do is link the characters. So we looked at all three of them and really wanted to feel that these were three guys where, they were all kind of, the water was right there and they're jumping in. They all want something. They all want to better their lives, which I would say if you talk to people who got into the drug game in some form or another, they're probably people who are looking to chase the dragon a little and better their lives. So, we wanted to establish them and watch them jump right in and try to swim.
And I want to ask about Franklin Saint. I think it's interesting that is the name that you gave him. I feel like so often when we hear in the news something...
The name was given after I was cast, actually.
I think they know that.
Saint. Oh, cool.
Because you seem like such a saint. But I do feel like we hear so often when something negative happens, we'll just say it right out there, if an unarmed black person gets shot, and then they say, well, he was no saint. And I'm curious if that had any part in the naming of this character, because obviously he seems like such a good guy.
It was just the dramatic irony in the name, you know what I mean? Like,
I thought it was always he's no Franklin.
the idea actually was because, it's so corny, how should I say this? I am. Because the only black character in the Peanuts and Charlie Brown is named Franklin.
Don't tell anyone at home he said that.
Wow.
That is what you get for coming to ATX. You get that Easter egg.
The real scoop.
Keep it on the DL.
Yeah, and in that Peanut special where they're all in Christmas without dancing, he's the only one that has rhythm. So that was where the first thing came from. And then the whole saint thing is just the dramatic irony. God, I can't believe that.
Such innocent beginnings.
That's true, though. It's true.
Now I want to talk about the cast. You have chosen, not only are they in the story newcomers to what they're doing, but for a lot of viewers, they're going to be newcomers as well. I mean, you chose specifically to pick people, and how did you find them? Because a lot of people are going to be new to these spaces.
I mean, we just had auditions and stuff, and best actress showed up. At first, I'll be honest. At first, I didn't know this guy. He's like from England. I was like, how's he gonna come here and be like from South Central? We need an American. Why are we always having British actors do the black thing and stuff?
Get off me, Samuel Jackson.
And then he comes in, and he starts doing all these lines from like black movies from the 90s, and then he starts talking from different languages from Los Angeles. So I'm like, I said, where did you learn that? He's like, tell me, what'd you say? What albums were you listening to?
Oh man, it was Ice Cube and all those people. Like, like Menace to Society, like Boys in the Hood. Like
You led with Boys in the Hood though, because you're
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
yeah.
It just is so. And then the real test is I had him do it with some friends of mine, like some rapper YG. And,
Yeah, like
and the
I
kid
met
that's-
YG, and then I was really British, but like when I'm around like John and in the early stages of auditioning, I was always American. So I would meet YG and I'd be like, "Oh man, you coming to London?" And then he was like, "Where you from?" "I'm from London, man. I'm from London." He was like, "Oh man, you sound like you from the set though."
So I mean that just did it for us. We were like, okay, this guy's.
So YG got me this role. Thank you, YG.
It was look, Frank, it was an audition that was sent on tape, and I didn't know he was British until after. His accent was that good from the jump. They just said, we have a tape of this guy, you should see it. It was like, who is this kid? And then we heard London, and it did give us pause. I know John specifically was really concerned about bringing a kid in from London to play someone in South Central, but yeah, I feel like you've just watched it.
You came around in the
It's
end.
all coming
Gotta keep it
out.
real, but you watched it. I mean, it's undeniable when you have this. And
It's
then-
shocking too. Like on set, he does the accent all day, like at lunch and everything. And then there's always a point at the end of the day where you're like, yeah, man, yeah. Okay, we're gonna go. I gotta call my. And it's like every time it's shocking and terrifying. It's like, Don't do that to
he
me.
becomes fish and chips.
Yeah.
Call him fish and chips.
And then
Would you ask
Juan,
him for fish and chips?
and Juan, just had come in and auditioned, and we put him through the pace a little bit, and he was great. And then Carter,
I'll tell you the
yeah,
Carter.
please.
Tommy.
Well, let Tommy do this.
Tommy.
First of all, also, it's important to understand, actors aren't just chosen individually. I mean, there's an ensemble. And as one person gets cast, it starts to put the balance together. And it's an extraordinary puzzle to put together. And it's a long process. So, and in fact, as we were getting near the end, there was still no Teddy. And it was like we were really struggling and trying to find somebody who would fit in with the rhythms that the other people or contradiction to the other people. And my wife, who's an actress, Christine Lottie, she was, we were laying in bed, and I was just going, we can't find this guy. And she said, oh, sure you can. I said, no, we can't. She said, no, there's a guy I saw in an off-Broadway show. He was incredible. Just read him. He'll be perfect for the part. And I was like, first of all, where the fuck have you been for the last 2 months? And second of all, really? And so then we had to okay, what's his name again? He told me the name, and it was like, okay, let me find his agent. Called his agent. He did a video audition, sent it to us. The next day we flew into LA.
get him on
The
a
next
plane.
day he was cast in the part.
but he told me when I got there, thank you. When I got to LA, he's like, you know why you're here, right? And I was like, yeah, I sent you that tape. And he's like, yeah, whatever. My wife, he told us that story, and then he ends it with so if you get it, you owe Christine 10%. And then he walks into the door.
I want to talk about the 80s for a minute. I've seen a few of the episodes, and one of the things I think that's interesting is that you go back to the time period, there's fantastic music cues, but you're not overdoing it. There's not a lot of nostalgia here of style or music or clothes, that it seems like perhaps, I'm guessing, because of the subject matter, you weren't interested in going campy. But was there a specific choices made to keep it? It almost feels contemporary.
Well, I mean, it's not that. I mean, I think it is nostalgic in a way, but not over the top. It's just, all that music is playing kind of like, what we say, it's kind of a source. It would be playing in the moment, you know what I mean? Like it would be playing, and they're not all those cues are all straight 80s. In the 80s, the early 80s specifically, those of you who are still in that time, the early 80s, they still played music from the late 70s as well. And so a lot of the music cues are things that would be playing in that time, and they're source cues, and they don't really pop out. They just really set the mood and the tone and stuff. But for those of people that have lived it and know those songs, it does give a kind of a emotional identification with what's happening at the moment. You know what I mean? Like it just really draws you in even further than what that time was.
And we did make decisions production-wise, production design. Costumes for me were a big one. It was like, how do you feel like you're in the 80s without doing something that's distracting with like on a shoulder, we left out the shoulder pads.
So I was just about to say the shoulder pads. The big shoulder pads.
You kind of pick your battles. You want it to feel authentic, but you don't want to hammer people that you're in a different time, and you do want it to feel kind of timeless and universal. And so it's just a balance.
And speaking of balance,
The Wonder Years with Coke.
That's the other tagline FX was going to go with. They pivoted, which I think was probably.
You still could, but maybe for season 2. The other balance that's happening, and I thought it was really interesting, and I'm watching it with the audience, that there were moments that are comedic in what is a very dark story. And a lot of times that's in Teddy and Juan Javier's storyline, which may be the most serious of the storylines. And so how do you make that work? How do you walk the line between telling a very serious story but highlighting the moments in it that actually are funny?
I don't think you were trying to be funny at all. That's what's cool about it.
I just have that face that people laugh at, I guess. I don't know. Human beings are complicated. People in desperate situations find moments of humor. There's humorous moments that come out of really desperate times and moments of violence. There's like a dark humor there. And these people, Teddy and Alejandro, are put together by all these extraneous circumstances, but they still have to work together to achieve their goal. And they stumble along the way and they butt heads along the way. And in that, you see more of the kind of the human element of it. It doesn't become such an abstraction, even though that the skeletal, geopolitical issue of what's going on with the Contras and the CIA absolutely informs everything that we do. But at the corner of it, at the center of it, it's two people. It's like a hellish marriage.
Well, it's the odd. I mean, frankly, it's a little bit of the odd. It's a little bit of the odd couple.
And they have to make it work. Right. And that's where you're going to find those moments, those real human moments in it.
And hopefully you have spaces in darker stories to find the love, because the subject matter is so, I think, inherently kind of dramatic and the scope of it is so vast. I feel like you get license to really reach for the humor and reach for the fun, certainly in the beginning when it's the rise. I mean, look, the canon of drug stories, and the beginning is a fucking blast. Like, it's a real ride until it's not. And I don't know if you're gonna laugh as much during season 5 as maybe you did tonight, but I think we'll constantly reach for that, because I don't know. I think you want the sugar that makes the medicine go down a little bit.
It also is, it's the blessing of television now, and it's the idea that, the concept when I started doing television, there was comedies and dramas. And I always thought, you don't wake up any morning and go, seems like a comedy day to me today, or it's a drama day today. It's just all of those things. And I think that's what the writing does in this show and the performance does. It's just a reflection of life, which even in the darkest moments sometimes are really funny and fun.
Yeah. John's always found levity, I feel like, in the serious stuff that he's done. And frankly, after 6 years of Justified, like, we always reached for the fun and the no more thing. And I really took that to heart and tried to remember that when we were doing this.
And Justified, such a great show.
I was only going to say, because Graham Yost is here in the audience tonight. And
Yeah, Graham too.
That makes me think of FX, which is, of course, your home. And John, you've spent some time there as well before with the people of O.J. Simpson. And I know that this started out elsewhere, but it seems like, do you feel like FX was probably the right place?
There's no place else that could have done this.
Here, man.
This
They've been
is
amazing.
FX. Shameless. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And language seems like is gone out the window.
Wow, did they let us go,
We
man?
don't care.
But I'll tell you what, man, we kept it reined in on this on the pilot, because it was a little like, let's see how much we can do and get away with, and they kept not saying anything, and then we kept pushing it throughout the season, and they kept not saying anything.
No, they didn't say anything pretty much on anything.
It's a whole new world.
They never came and said, "Oh my God, you did this." Like, but that's FX. I mean,
Well,
because he's seen the stuff that
there is that
done.
straw moment, so you kind of just have to go with whatever.
They were cool with the straw.
I know for a fact a lot of the Latin actors, we try to pepper in Spanish bad words because, who would catch it? So
That's
it's
not
fine.
cool, bro.
Puta madre.
That's not cool, man. I gotta learn some Spanish, but they did. They really let us go, and frankly, it wasn't meant to be over the top or gratuitous. It's the world. Like, if you're gonna tell this story in this world and not say the F word, I don't know how I would have done. Like, really, I would have kept writing it and having to hit delete 4 times.
No, you have to just say the F word.
Which would have been so awkward.
Oh gosh.
But let's talk about that straw for a minute. The ass crack crack.
You ever tried it?
I feel like there are some people probably in the audience who didn't realize that that was a delivery system, that maybe some of us learned something new tonight.
I bet you there's...
Maybe it's just me.
We're in Austin. I bet you there's some people that know that's a delivery system.
Oh, no.
But why that choice? Just out of curiosity.
You know what? I
Hip
wish
town.
I could that was in the script when I came on. I can't.
Not taking credit?
Here's what I will say. I didn't get rid of it. But that was a John and Eric thing that was in there from the beginning that I loved, and we absolutely kept.
And so season 2, we're absolutely more of that, because you guys are already done shooting season 1. So do you have to up the ante in season 2 of delivery systems?
Well, I mean, if I say that, then I say where we're going. So there'll be a lot of delivery systems. There's a lot of ways to deliver different things.
And
Where
Damson,
am
for
I?
you as an Englishman,
Anybody seen episode 3?
as an Englishman playing an American, I don't know how much experience you have had doing that before. It seems to me this is your first big role in the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's one thing being in London and, you know, watching movies, and like I'm the youngest of 6, and we all like talk in an American accent and stuff, like for fun and stuff. And then finally coming to America and realizing that you're really bad at it. And so yeah, like just being around these guys. I had Dub C from West Side Connection.
West Side Connection.
He's like Ice Cube's best friend and now my best friend. Thank you, Dub C. And yeah, he just walked me through the motions. He said I was there with the accent. It was more about kind of culture, you know, to walk the walk, and we did that. Yeah, so it's not a hard transition when you put the work in. Yeah.
And for all 3 of you, I think that each one of your characters, as John was saying before, has good in them. I mean, they want to feed their families. They want to help the United States. They want to do the right thing. They want to take care of their soldiers. When you approach a part like this, obviously nobody's a hero or a villain. So how do you figure out who you are? Or does it change from scene to scene as you're working on it?
The character of Alejandro Esteves, he's a Contra fighter. The Contras were a counter-guerrilla force that were fighting against the Sandinista government. The reason I mention this is because this is a person that's come from a war-torn country. The Contras, over the course of the months of the war, were brought up on human rights charges. If you study the history of it, certain people in the Contra forces and the different groups that were in different parts of the country were creating incredible havoc to people, to children. It's a really dark, dark world that this person comes from. Within that, I can't, as an actor, preemptively judge who this character is. I can't put that on it because then I can't work within that. I have to believe and I have to try to understand the point of view that that person's coming in. And Alejandro is a true believer. He doesn't consider himself a terrorist. He doesn't consider himself a pillager of villages. He considers himself a patriot that's trying to get a country back, a country that was taken away from him. You have to try to understand the point of view without sympathizing for it or without trying to, invest so much into it. Because without it, then you just can't play in it. And it's tough. It's tough, but in that lies the challenge, and that's what makes it so much fun to play.
I think also, my first day at work, I was at Tommy's office, and he said, you're going to be asking me a lot of questions like, well, what happens next in episode 2, 3, 4, on, and I'm not going to tell you, and it's going to really frustrate you, and you're going to get really mad at me sometimes. But that's how humans live their lives. We don't know what's going to happen when we walk out of this theater. Anything could happen, and we will behave in ways that will shock ourselves when we meet those moments. And so, to the point of figuring out who these people are, I think the thing that I like most about the story is that I think it's 3 separate coming-of-age stories, and I think that these characters are trying to figure out themselves. Who am I? What do I believe in? What do I want to be? Where do I want to go? And so if you give over to the mystery of like, I don't know how this ties into the bigger thing, I can only be in this moment now, it's usually where they're at too. And so I found it to be, thank you, I found it to be a profound acting lesson.
I will say this also, part of the blessing of television is that these characters also for John and Dave and for the writing staff continue to grow too. They, as you know, it's called writer's Darwinism. You know, as you watch Carter play Teddy, there's something that if you're really a smart writer, you start to just, pull from those people whatever you can as that character shapes, and it's the blessing of television.
Yeah,
It
we're
is
going to get some of those
absolutely
writers for the second season. So we like.
I believe I probably used up more of my time than I was supposed to, and I know some of you must have some questions, so please raise your hand, make yourself known. Ask the gentleman of Snowfall a question. I see a man in red who looks like he wants to. There you go. Is he yelling or does he have a microphone? I think you should yell.
All right, so this character development is incredible. It reminds me a little bit about Breaking Bad, how you've got all these bad things going on and then you bring these people in. And since you actors are not allowed to know the future, I guess, are you not allowed to know the other seasons? How do you develop, work together to develop that ensemble, sort of future blind?
Well, we don't actually see each other. I mean, Tommy had this great idea that we'd have table reads before every episode kind of launches. But before that, I don't see Carter, and then every time I see him, like once a week, I give him like a fat hug, like, oh, I forgot you're on this show. So yeah, it's with regards to like ensemble, you're kind of in your own corner, and that's how it is in real life, I think. So.
Yeah, I mean, these worlds will start to collide more and more as we go through this season and seasons obviously subsequent if we're lucky enough to get there. But yeah, each kind of world is a world unto itself, and we have like a troupe, in each world, and there is a little, without giving anything away, there will be crossover or whatever, but they just took it upon themselves and kind of kept evolving and finding it. And the table reads were a really wonderful idea to remind everybody, like, you are a part of this bigger thing, this bigger story and piece.
Well, it's a riveting first episode, I gotta tell you. It's really great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So John, you talked about world building and how that was something that you were excited about and you liked doing. There's a lot going on. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and sort of the freedom that maybe television has given you to do that, or this sort of format's given you to do that. And then Dave, as the showrunner, that's a lot of threads to sort of like keep together. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about that and how the process goes in the writer's room of keeping those threads together, keeping all these different things on rails and moving. Sure.
I mean, well, the cool thing for me was I'm new to television. I'm totally new to television. I've only been in television for now 3.5 years now, ironically. And so it feels like 6 years or 10 years. But the shows that I really enjoyed were these self-contained, culturally specific worlds. And so when this idea came about, I was like, wow, we got to find a way to like have each one of these worlds live just really, really specific to the cultures that they're in, right? It's like you watch The Sopranos back in the day. There were things, if you weren't an Italian American, there was things that David Chase put in there that they may have passed you over, but upon second or third reflection, if you knew a little bit of something, you'd be like, oh wow, they were so specific to this one thing, but it played real. And so that's what we would all talk about in the writer's room, like, okay, there has to be these things that, that are in these various worlds that play very, very real to different specific audiences of the show, but they'll be universal because they're so specific. And, for me, all the stories that there's never been a story that has dramatized what's going on the West Coast kind of cocaine rise. And that's what we kept saying in the writer's room, like, how do we do this in a different way that is entertaining? And we're not trying to be didactic. We're not trying to educate you guys on this stuff. We're just really trying to really have a good time with a show and have you go along the journey, the dramatic journey of these three characters and stuff. But a lot of this stuff is really based in, not in books, because there's hardly any books at all on it. It's all based on the oral kind of like storytelling of there are people that live this stuff. And so we really had to bring people in the room that basically could really speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted each of these worlds to feel specific and real, and brought in consultants kind of who were deep in each part of it to get their stories. And look, it's a real storytelling challenge, juggling, as you point out, juggling 3 stories. You kind of feel like watching the pilot that there's an A story, a B story, and a C story, right, with Franklin and Teddy and then Oso. And we wanted, we didn't know how that was going to evolve, frankly. We know Franklin's world is the anchor of it, but we wanted each character to have, some storyline in each episode. And we stayed mostly true to that, again, not to give anything away, but it's a challenge to make one story really kind of cook and work, and to make 3 work in every episode was daunting. And we just kept kind of grinding and kept at it, and thankfully FX will let us air a longer episode if we need to. And I hope in the future, once we've kind of set the template, that we'll do, an episode that's all one guy, or you know what I mean? Like if it feels like it's warranted and it works. But for now, we really want everybody engaged in each one of these lines.
Excellent. All right. Yes, ma'am, in the blue.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, when you're doing a film, you have more time to do it and everything. But for me, it's just really like the whole gun-ho adrenaline rush of getting it out and at an elevated level of quality. And it's beautiful to work with people that really share your passion and share the passion for the story that you're trying to do and stuff. I mean, like, I made my first movie like in less than 37 days. And I made a couple of pictures in a very low budget way. So television is like, for me, television is like, it's many movies. I don't see any difference anymore of between. You see how this pilot played on the big screen. I mean, did it play like a movie or no, right? It's very cinematic. It's like, and it's like, for me, anything, whether or not it's television or film, it has to have that repeat value thing where you can watch it over and over and over again, and also like a record. There are different parts that you may want to linger on. And so that's the stuff we always talk about, like what are the aha moments in whatever episode that people are going to linger in, like, I guess they call it water cooler moments, because I'm always about, okay, there has to be something that people just really want to talk about in every episode. It has to happen in an organic fashion, like we're not reaching for it, like trying to make it hard hitting, but it has to happen in an organic way. And that's what this is for me. That's what this medium is for me.
You sound so excited when you say that. That's so great. We have time for one more question, so make it good, whoever you are. Where's your hand? Ooh, you put your hand up fast, so it'll be great. You go.
I mean, challenges bringing the script to life. This is going to sound, maybe this is a terrible answer, but it's really hard to do this and to kind of do it well. I feel like everything. I can't necessarily come up with one thing, aside from the straw maybe, that was particularly challenging and how to...
I think it's also a really great time to shout out to Adil and Bilal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The 2 filmmakers who did this pilot. This was the first time they'd done television. It was really the first time they'd ever shot in America. When they got to the set, there was a script supervisor. They had never worked with a script supervisor. They didn't know the luxury of that. They had made this extraordinary film. They're Belgian filmmakers, and called Black, which is if you get a chance to see. And they were really instrumental in bringing this to the screen.
Yeah, the energy they brought to all these things that
So
on the page
cinematic.
things on the page where you're like, that could be cool, like. For instance, the wrestling sequence, which is like, all right, how do you make this feel? And it's incredible, all the little pieces they got, the little kind of details, the way they cut it. There's so much energy in that sequence that, look, as a writer, you have things shot that you write where it's, frankly, not the best version of it, right? It kind of lays there, it feels generic and whatever, and you have to be disappointed, and yet you're not the director, you're not the guy out there, you have to respect that. But when people kind of take something where it's like, okay, that could have been a wrestling scene, but bring something to it that it lifts off the page. I mean, those guys, I feel like, elevated everything that was on the page, and it's hard to do, but man, they were wonderful and the sweetest kids.
And with that, we thank you so much for being here, and we thank you so much for being here. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, ATX.
Chips.